How Singapore changed my perspective on life. What's up, everyone? Chris in Asia here, or Chris here. And today we're going to be doing a reaction video, right? A lot of this series that I'm going to be covering will cover why my family moved across the planet to Singapore, our experiences here, both the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. I want this series to be very conversational, and I want it to be very real, right? As you know, I moved to Singapore in early November of 2024. And we have loved the journey, right? There have been challenges, right? When you move across the world with two kids, two dogs and a cat, right? There's naturally going to be some complications. But I wanted to make this video to talk about, to get more in depth in terms of some of our reasons and some of the things that we're experiencing, right? And if you are thinking in 2025 with all that's going on in the world, right? No matter which side of the political field you lean on, right? It's not about that, right? It's about getting the most you can out of life. If you're thinking about moving to Asia, Europe, anywhere in the world, right? It probably helps. I think at least what I do is I interview people, right? And a lot of people are flocking to YouTube to look at videos to understand what people's cultural experiences are, what their difficulties, what their challenges. So if anything, I want this video to be education for you. And if you're thinking about moving out of the country or moving to Singapore, feel free to put something in the comment section below. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring up this video about how expats feel about living in Singapore. And having been here for over 3 months now, I think that, this will be unique for me to kind of weigh in on my experience here. And yeah, so let's talk about it.
The rents are crazy.
I feel like the rules here are like so strict.
Okay, hold on.
Expensive, so today's lunch I skipped.
We've been impacted by friends that are leaving because of the
rents are crazy.
I feel like the rules here are like so strict.
Okay, so let's deal with that. Let's deal with that. Already someone said the food is expensive, which it can be, right? Look, there are Michelin star rated restaurants here. There's a host of Western restaurants that are European based. Right. If you choose to live an expensive lifestyle and you have finer taste and you want to eat out all the time, yes, it can be pretty expensive. But I think that's not a Singapore thing. That's a world thing, right? Even in the U.S., right? If, we moved here from Austin, Texas, right? If you don't go grocery shopping, you don't cook, right, and you want to eat out all the time, then yeah, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Rent, I can attest that it was it was sticker shock when we got here in terms of rent. We pay significantly more here. This is the first time in years and ages that we've actually rented as opposed to owning, right? Naturally, there's some complication that comes with, living here in Singapore and, right, being able to buy property, right? There's some things that have to take place before you have to even think about buying property, right? But rent is expensive. But again, I will say you kind of get what you pay for in the sense that it's not the cheapest here in terms of rent, but like the trade-offs, right? In terms of, I think what some of these people are going to say, this is my first time watching this video, by the way. I just chose to do a blind react. I think what you're going to hear, though, is some of the benefits are really, really important. And sometimes that may justify paying more rent. But yeah, I can say that the rent is pretty high. It fluctuates, right? As the tech field kind of, goes up and down and things of that nature. But let's watch a little bit more.
Strict. Like sometimes, I just want to get loose a little bit. Hey, boss.
She just said it can be a bit strict. You guys heard in my previous video, then, before we moved here, people made a lot of comments in terms of like, oh my gosh, like it's illegal to chew gum there. Or define strict. Right. I think we don't see the police a whole lot. Right. You can't chew gum. You can't eat or drink on the MRT, which is like the Singapore's version of the subway. Right. But I think the benefits of that are that it's clean. There's no littering and things of that nature. Right. So if that's strict and maybe you want to go to Thailand or someplace in the surrounding Asia areas and feel a little bit more relaxed, I don't feel like there's people watching me and saying, hey, make sure you follow the rules. Right. The theme of Singapore, the overall gist here is that, hey, you know what it takes to be a good citizen. Here are the rules. Please follow them. This is how we got this society the way that we is. This is how we enjoy safety. This is how we enjoy no crime. Just follow the rules, right? And so for me, I don't know if I'd agree with that in terms of strict, right? There's not a whole lot of policing here. It's just that, be a good person, be a good citizen. That seems to be about it.
Bosses, it's Eleanor from Asian Boss. Did you know that almost 30% of Singapore's population is made up of foreigners? But why do so many people choose to move to Singapore, and where do they come from? Today, we hit the streets of Singapore to ask expats about their experience living and working in Singapore. Let's go. So first of all, where are you guys originally from and how long have you been living here?
Originally from India, been living here about 11 years now.
Yeah, I'm from India as well. I've been living here for 15 years.
I'm from Malaysia about 7 years.
Let's fast forward a little bit.
So originally from Sydney, Australia, and we've been here about six and a half years.
Yeah, I'm originally from New Zealand, but we lived in Australia before here.
Yeah.
She's Australian.
So 6.5 years is a pretty long time, right?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself expat or a local?
Oh, I don't think I could call myself local.
All right, so naturally I'm an expat, right? Been here a little over 3 months. One thing that I saw as a recurring theme here with a lot of folks that I spoke with, especially when you work in the tech sector like my wife and I do, right? Typically, a lot of times these tech companies will give you what's called an expat package. The packages have changed over the years, right? Used to be, you got a package that was pretty robust, which meant that, you know, the salary was really, really good. They paid for your kid's school, they paid for housing, transportation, all these different things. Times are tight and I think things are lean, right? So it takes a little bit more sacrifice or a lot more sacrifice, I think, to move here these days, right? And so, but the thing that I noticed that despite the inflation and despite it being more difficult to get higher salaries and to get all the perks that you used to get, there's just a host of people here that said that, hey, you know, I chose to come here for maybe 2 years. It was supposed to be a temporary move or maybe 3 years max, right? And I'm meeting with and networking with people and become friends with people that, you know, 2 years turned into 20, right? Or 3 years turned into 10, right? And so there's something to be said about why people keep kind of extending their stay here, but we'll get more into that, right? I'm definitely don't consider myself a local. I have a very focused approach since moving here in that I'm doing my best to really, really understand the geopolitical situation here, get to know a whole bunch of locals, right? But definitely expat.
But probably still expat, but we love living in
We
Singapore.
love living here.
And we have no intention on leaving anytime soon.
I'm originally from the UK. I've been here since 2017. I just got my PR in principle approved, so I think I'm starting to, and I live in an HDB with my Singaporean wife, so I'd like to think I'm closer to local than I am.
So he said HDB, right? HDBs, think of HDBs here in Singapore as public housing, right? But I think the interesting thing about that is that when you think of public housing, at least in some of the states that I've lived in the US, it tends to sometimes come with a negative connotation, right? Whereas here, public housing, HDBs, the heartlands, things of that nature, they are so robust. It's not like that here, right? I think, and this is, don't quote me on my ignorance here, right? It's very hard to get into HDBs or public housing if you're not Singaporean, right? He talked about getting his permanent residency. That's a journey in and of itself, right? Something that we are on the process to doing, but it takes time. There's some circumstances that have to be met that I think are more than fair, right? You have to demonstrate, you know, a certain salary. You have to demonstrate that you are a contributing member to society. There's lots of things to understand about that, right? So we're early on in our journey for that, but HDBs are very interesting here, right? It's unlike any other place that I've lived, especially in the US, right? Because there's all sorts of connotations when it comes to public housing and public transportation. Those things are very, very different here, right? So HDBs, for someone like myself or my family, you know, we could not get into an HDB. Maybe when you become a PR, you get your PR, that's something you explore down the road, but they're very unique here in that sense.
Expat at this point.
I'm originally from Thailand and I have been living here on and off almost 11 years. It's 11 years, I think. Yeah, it has been a long time.
Yeah, so 11 years is a really long time. Do you consider yourself local or expat?
Almost half, I would say. Yeah, half.
Originally, I'm from Denmark and I've been living here for 34 years. 32 years, something like that. I'm more or less a local.
So what is the difference, would you think, between a local and an expat? At what point does an expat become a local?
What happens normally with expats is that after maybe 3-4 years, they have to take a decision to stay or to go back where they come from or take another job.
I think expats would be not Singaporean or like Singaporean Malaysian. Technically, they're like international people or like coming from other countries and then work and live here in Singapore. Yeah,
that's a good question. I guess I would look at an expat more from the point of view of their long-term outlook in Singapore. So do they plan to stay in Singapore for a long time, retire here? Versus are they looking at it as a stop between their next destination. Yeah.
Expat is more like you know that you were not going to be here for like forever.
So I want to say this. When given the choice to move here, we didn't choose to do like a 2 or 3 year package. We chose to do indefinite, right? But with the state of the world, the state of the tech industry, the state of just overall industry, that's becoming harder and harder to predict. We are here for the long haul. What that means, if that means 4 or 5 years, if that means even longer than that, that's not necessarily up to us. There's lots of things that can happen, right? In terms of, we've got a son that's 15, right? We are anticipating, right? He's on his basketball journey. He's playing basketball, right? We would like him to go to college, probably not in the U.S., right? I think I'll do another video about the educational system and some of the pitfalls of that, right? And so there's lots of decisions like with both our kids, right? Is he going to do school in Europe? Is he going to do college in Australia, right? It all depends on what happens with his academic and his basketball journey, right? But it's difficult these days to say to plot out your next 5 years or to even say that, hey, I'm here for good. I'm here for the long haul. We intend to be here for the long haul, but naturally some things may change. It all depends on the administration. It depends on the PR journey and things of that nature, right? And so it's kind of in flux at this particular point.
But for local, it's like this is your home, and everything, whatever happened, culture-wise and everything, it will be like based here in Singapore.
And actually 30% of the Singapore population are not local, they're foreigners. So why do you think so many people want to live and work in Singapore?
It's a good base. It is safe, it's stable, that's it. And a lot of business use Singapore as a hub because it's easier to approach different part of Asia.
So what she said is right? That was simply put part of the major reason that we moved here, right? It is simple, it is safe, it's a hub. We've not spent a whole lot of time in Asia, right? Singapore is a good and easy entry point into other parts of Asia, right? And so I think that's a huge benefit to living here, and it's part of the reason that we came here.
Asia.
I can only speak from my personal perspective, but I'd say the quality of life, the ease of kind of getting set up, whether you're a business owner or you're coming here to work for a company, is remarkably different. And I think there's just a general sense of openness to the idea of foreign labor, of immigrants, and a real demand, particularly in the workforce, for people with skills and kind of with capabilities that can help the nation positively. So I'd say it's a really attractive place to come.
It has really good career opportunities. So for a lot of people here, actually most of the expats that I meet here do move here for career. And I think both in terms of the financial sector as well as tech now, it's really booming. So I would say that's probably the reason why so many foreigners choose.
I don't see the date on this video. I mean, this isn't an old video. The tech sector is going through changes right now. I think I've seen lots of videos on YouTube about mass layoffs. That's a part of the new normal, right? I never want to speculate and rejoice in anyone's downfall, right? But I've been in tech a long time, going on over 15 years, and simply put, at the risk of oversimplifying it, right? You have a lot of, with the major companies like the Ciscos of the world, the Microsoft, even the Googles, right? You have a lot of bloat, right? And in this age of AI, in this age of having to pivot your business and having to just exist in the tech sector specifically, you have to be agile, I think. And I think that companies should, every year you as a person, whether we're talking professional development or personal development, you should be assessing and reassessing your priorities, right? Your development as a person, right? I think companies owe it to themselves to do the same, right? Now, there's a proper way to go about it, right? We've seen lots of inappropriate behavior in terms of company layoffs, like people are not getting advance notice and companies are looking at employees as just a number, right? So there has to be a balance between building a culture of stability, safety, and innovation, while also understanding that, hey, here are the pillars of business, here are our needs as a business. We have to make sure that we're aligned to that, and we have to drive business to where it's both profitable, right, and both to where a company is thriving. And so I think there's a negative connotation around layoffs in the tech industry, but it's kind of a necessary evil, or I don't want to use that word, but a necessary adjustment, right? Companies have to get rid of bloat. And in the long run, I think if a company is constantly, kind of mindful of their culture and mindful of reassessing their needs and their challenges and where they're pivoting and pointing their focus, I think it's an overall good thing for the company, right? And so things like professional assessment, reskilling, make sure you're up to speed on the latest developments, making sure that you're not just becoming stagnant in your career. I think the onus is on you as an employee, right? Not that, companies have a responsibility to employees and a responsibility to provide a thriving workplace, but in this age of layoffs, right, you kind of got to keep your head on a swivel, right, and be able to adjust to the coming times.
To be here, and I think it's amazing to travel around the region.
Singapore is really, expat friendly. People speak English here like everywhere. And then to the point where everywhere is like so convenient to get around, and a very developed country. So that's why it's attracting like a lot of expats coming here to work and live.
Why did you decide to come and work in Singapore?
I'm here because my company flew me here. So yeah, there's like a project going on. That's why I need to be here.
Post-Brexit, the UK was in a really bad place. The mood was very low. And at that point in my career, I really wanted a change. I wanted exposure to a more dynamic region, a place where I thought I would kind of professionally and personally grow. And I think for me, Singapore was the best of both worlds. It was a place where I could communicate easily.
So this is something I want to double click on, right? He talked about for his particular situation, post-Brexit, he wanted to personally and professionally grow, right? This is where I'm at my journey, right? I've had the fortunate privilege of working all over the world, traveling all over the world, living in a bunch of different places, right? Asia was a curiosity for me, right? Not just an itch I needed to scratch per se, right? But it's just this part of the world, this region. There are challenges working in the tech space here, in the sense that when you think of Singapore as a hub, right? When you think of Japan, whether we're talking Japan, Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines, these are all very different regions with different languages, different cultures, different way of doing things. It can be a challenge, right? Because when you think about doing business in Asia Pacific, you need to be up to speed on each of these cultures, right? The way that you close a deal in Singapore locally is not the same way that you do business in the Philippines. It's not the same way in Korea that has its own challenges. Not the same with Japan, which is a very long-term view, right? But these are the things, after having been in tech for so long and working in technical sales, right, and working with large customers for, a number of different years, right? It's not that I get bored. I need a challenge. I need to be keeping myself on my toes, right? And so this is a whole new world, not necessarily of strange, but just, I have to adjust to the way that I do things, right? I have to understand the underlying fabric here, right? And just when you think you got it nailed down, right, in Singapore, right, you need to kind of adjust for a different part of Asia, like Vietnam, right? If you think you got that nailed down, Japan is a totally different thing. Malaysia is a totally different thing, right? And so that is exciting to me. To some people, that may be exhausting. They're like, okay, that's too complicated. That's too complex. But for me, I'm up to that task, right? That excites me, right? The idea of like having new problems on a multi-layered level to solve and new challenges, right? And then challenging myself to get outside of my comfort zone, right? That's huge for me, right? That excites me. That gets me going.
And a place where I could kind of travel and kind of get that exposure that I was looking for. So that was the combination of things that drew me to it.
To survive. For others, I'm not sure, maybe.
So you mentioned to survive, right? So what's your current job in Singapore?
No, chef. At weekend, weekdays, I'm an engineer.
And what's your salary like in Singapore compared to if you were to work in your home country?
Here is higher, definitely higher than my country.
That's going to be different. That depends on the person, right? I can say that coming from the U.S., my salary and my wife's salary, I think it's a bit lower, right? And I think that's a reflection of the times, right? Again, the robust packages that expats used to get, whether we're talking the Middle East, like places like Dubai or Europe and things of that nature, right? Things are a bit tighter, right? And then there's the transfer of the Singaporean dollar versus the US dollar, right? And so, but again, working in sales, a lot of times your comp plan is leveraged, right? You may have a base of 70% and then a bonus of 30%, right? Depends on what your role is, right? And so I think it depends, right? And I think that's going to be subjective depending on the person.
If I were in India, I think the salary would be
It's very different from
The
We're going to skip a little bit here.
compared to your home country, can you give some examples like rent or food?
Of course, we are living in Singapore, yeah. The rent is the most expensive. The food-wise also expensive. But if you compare the living cost with the income, it will still have a lot of gap and then still higher than back home.
So she says back home, it also depends on where you're from, but we've gone over that, right? Food can be expensive here, but it's all in how you adjust to being in a different place, right? Rent can be expensive here as well, right? It depends on how you adjust, right? And what stage you're at life, right? Do you have kids? Do you have roommates? You know, are you solo, right? You know, so there's a whole number of factors that contribute to that. We're gonna skip forward a little bit here.
Yeah, even though it's high like this, but
まあ仕方ないというか、
Conceptions about the cost of living here, which a lot of friends who haven't been here or lived here kind of assume about the place. So yeah, I think it's cheap, it's high quality, it's safe. I was in London is
まあ仕方ないというか、はい、
Says something.
local. The cost of living compared to where I was in London
So I keep messing up the video, but he says he's kind of correcting that assumption. Like if you eat cheap and eat local, that's important here.
is a lot more amenable, and I think if you're smart, you can really you can really sort of live very affordably and have a really high quality of life. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the cost of living here, which a lot of friends who haven't been here or lived here kind of assume about the place. So yeah, I think it's cheap, it's high quality, it's safe. You can walk around at night without being worried about your phone or your wallet going missing.
And what's your favorite thing about living in Singapore and working in Singapore?
I won't beat that dead horse anymore, right? You know, but you've heard me say in previous videos, right? You know, it's about checking off the boxes, right? Depending on where you're at in life and what you're prioritizing or what's important to you, right? If you want a luxurious experience, you have that here. You can get that just about anywhere in the world, right? But if you want to be sensible, right, it all depends on what your perspective is, right, and kind of how you adjust and how you live, right? And so, yes, it's easy from the outside looking in for people to be like, oh, it's really, really expensive, it's really, really pricey, right? But it all depends on your approach.
stability, political and financial. Yes.
I never had a car here.
Political, financial stability, you know, having come from the U.S. Without making this a political video, lots of instability there, right? You know, and those sorts of things kind of infuse, those sorts of things are the foundational pieces of safety, right? In terms of deciding where you want to live, right? And if you want to deal with political and societal ambiguity, right? There's a lot of that going around right now. And I think the U.S. is in a weird and a strange place, right? You know, where I have a lot of friends that are still back in the U.S. that just, they don't know what the next 2-3 years are going to hold, right? Not necessarily talking about doom and gloom, right? But here, I think if I had to say from my own personal experience, it's a bit more stable here, I think, than in the U.S., especially these days.
I don't drive, never. I have used my bicycle a lot here, and you can take a taxi, and the public system here is very nice.
A lot of opportunity.
So yeah, we had multiple vehicles in the U.S. We do not have vehicles here. You can have a vehicle here, right? It's really expensive to own a vehicle here, right? I'm just throwing out a number, right? Like I think like a Honda Civic or something will cost you like, I don't know, over $100,000, right? And it's not necessarily the cost of the vehicle, right? It's just all sorts of things that go into having a vehicle here, where for us, it just wasn't worth it. We do a lot more walking, right? And Singapore is largely small is the way that I would put it, right? You can get anywhere on the island with public transportation, be it bus, be it MRT, or if you're in a rush and it's raining, and because sometimes it can be, you know, hard to get to public transportation if it's raining, you can take a Grab, which is Singapore's version of Uber. It's pretty economical here, and so we saw no need for a vehicle. If both of us had expat packages that where a company paid for a vehicle, sure, I mean, I'd take one. But like we've enjoyed not having car payments. We've enjoyed taking public transportation. This is the first place in a long time that I've lived where, you know, the system is so comprehensive. It's easy to understand, to get to different points and to navigate it. That's phenomenal, right? So we don't miss having vehicles at all.
Opportunities, a lot of, you know, like growing opportunities for you, like compared to Vietnam. Although Vietnam is like is developing right now, but definitely Singapore has so much more opportunity for you.
Since I have a daughter who's 10, So school is one of the important part. So you have a lot of international schools. And other day I was reading and I was quite impressed. I think the government did a pilot test of artificial intelligence, introducing that in primary. And there was this pilot done for grade 5, and now it will be introduced in the state.
Okay, so international schools. Both our kids are attending an international school here. My son's playing basketball. They're enjoying it. That is, the education here is phenomenal. It was not feasible to put my kids in the local school system, which means that they went to international school because school is very competitive here, and it's a very rigorous and stringent process for kids that are local Singaporeans. And so if you have an older child that's used to the British school system or the American school system, it's like oil and water sometimes trying to get them into the local school system here, right? It's just a different grading process. So international school is the way for us. Quite expensive. We're still trying to navigate that piece, right? Quite expensive, right? But the piece she said there about artificial intelligence being introduced in state schools, I think that's important, right? Singapore is very focused on AI, right? As is the whole world, right? And they want to be the hub for AI. I am selfishly myself have a vested interest in making that happen, right? Working in the tech space like I do, and I think this is the right approach. Right, there's this air of fear around AI, right? And we'll do other videos in terms of our reaction on DeepSeek, what's going on with ChatGPT and OpenAI and all these different things, right? But I see a lot of schools, especially when my kids were in school in Texas, right? There was a concerted effort into how do we catch kids cheating, and like how do we make sure that kids aren't using ChatGPT to kind of cheat and and work on their assignments, and that's just totally the wrong approach, right? Whenever tech evolves and you have things like automation, whether we're talking software, evolution, cloud, whatever it is, you name it, upskilling is going to remain important, right? Jobs will be there. AI is not going to replace all jobs. It's going to shift them, right? We will still need, I liken it to the video game industry, right? Everyone thinks that when it comes to video games, you have to have these hotshot developers. Well, the creative arts director is just as important. You need someone at the helm kind of directing things, right? Because a game without a narrative, without a story, without a shape, means nothing. You can have the best technical staff in the world. And it's the same with AI, right? We got to stop running from it, right? There's a book that I'm going to be doing a review on called, The Coming Wave, and it talks about, it's a bit of a doom and gloom in terms of AI, but we're on that path now. We're on that path. We can't get off this path, right? So the best we can do is introduce it to our kids early, have them get comfortable with it, familiar with it, so that they can understand, okay, well, this is how it fits and applies to my future. We'll do more videos on that. We're not going to go too deep into that, but introducing AI early is the right approach. You can't just be an ostrich, put your head in the sand and be like, okay, I'm just going to put my head in the sand until it goes away. If there is something that is shaping the world, and I mean dramatically shaping the world, you can either ignore it, you can either be in denial, or you can embrace it, right? Understand it. As someone that, works in cybersecurity as well, it is scary. It's a double-edged sword. Technology often is, right? The amount of growth and the amount of data that we're pouring into it is extremely alarming, and there's going to be guardrails that we're still trying to establish, right? You got people that are working for whole companies that are just throwing data at it, personal information, professional company information, right? But, it's here, right? And so the best thing we can do is just to get people and get our kids familiar with it, understand it, and understand how to leverage it. Where do we go from here, right? So I think this is the right approach, right? And if Singapore is serious, which they are, about being a future hub for this is the right approach.
State school, which I think it's a pioneer, so they have a focus on education and tech-enabled education.
It's quite easy to live here. A lot of good things, it's super safe compared to Italy, of course. It's a very good choice, especially with the...
So he said something there that I want to focus on. And what I hope you notice with these videos, right? Italy is a romanticized place, right? I've not been to Italy, right? It's one of the few places I haven't been to, right? But what you're seeing here, you're seeing folks from India, from Italy, from Europe in this video that have perceptions about different things, right? And so the fact that he says Singapore is safe compared to Italy, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but there's a romanticized view of Italy, right? It's like, it's good food, it's great culture and everything, right? And so let's go back to what I said about checking the boxes, right? I think a lot of times, at least I'll just speak for myself and some Americans, right? A lot of Americans generalize and romanticize the rest of the world. oh man, if I could just live this place, if I could just live this place. Like, guys, I've lived all over. I can tell you, it's not like, oh my gosh, you leave the U.S. and all of a sudden my life is perfect. It's better, right? Sometimes we suffer. People suffer from that grass is greener on the other side, right? It's all about dialing in on your priorities, what's important to you, and understand that life isn't perfect. The world isn't perfect, right? It's about what fits for you at this particular juncture of your life, right? Singapore is it for us. That may not be for some people. For some people, it's Hawaii. Hawaii has their own issues, their own challenges, right? Same with Italy, same with Germany, same with different parts of Europe, right? And so what I hope you see in these videos is that, when it comes to a diversity of thought and perspective, you have to decide and you have to weigh in and factor in, okay, what's important for me and how do I get the most out of where I live, right? So just wanted to point that out.
With kids, to me, it's perfect. With kids, is perfect. Maybe if you're single, it could be maybe a bit boring, but with family, to me, it's...
So, haven't been single for quite some time. Love you, Alona. I can see that being a thing here, right? It seems to me like, I think there is nightlife here. I haven't really explored that. I've done a ton of networking, and I'm going to do a video on, kind of my super intensive and authentic approach to networking, right? But I think if you're younger and you're thinking you're going to come to Singapore to party and just meet a whole bunch of new folks, I think that can be a bit difficult, right? But I'm a bit unplugged from that scene, right? For me, my priorities at this particular point at the ripe old age of being in my 40s, right? It's just, is it safe? Are my kids coming home? Can they thrive? Right? Do I have to worry about, my environment? Like, that is worth its weight in gold, right? Versus, right, living someplace that has an exuberant nightlife, right? Or I got things to do at 3, 4, 5 a.m., right? So perfect for me. And that.
Perfect.
How about some challenges? What are the biggest difficulties about living in Singapore?
The weather is challenging, definitely. But this is something just related to me. I really miss mountains because I come from.
All right. The weather is challenging. I'm from South Carolina originally, where it's hot and humid. I do miss seasons. I did love living in Seattle. Before moving to Austin, Texas, I lived in Seattle. We moved from Seattle to Austin, which was a cross-country move in the U.S., smack dab in the middle of the pandemic with 2 kids, 2 dogs. We didn't have the cat then. That was a challenging move, right? But Seattle was great, right? It had, we lived in a town called Sammamish, and so it was like living in a postcard. Lots of greenery, mountains, hills, right? And seasons. I do miss seasons, although I don't mind the humidity here. It can be quite humid, right? And it's the same year round. It doesn't get cold here. Christmas was weird for us. It was our first Christmas here. And social media kind of had to remind me that there was snow, like back in the U.S., like different from this year was especially crazy. I think like there were parts of the U.S. that got snow that don't typically get snow. I don't miss snow at all. Don't like snow. Don't need the snow, right? But if you're not used to humidity and warm weather, that can be a challenge. And if you need seasons, yeah, Singapore is going to be a bit of a challenge for you.
From Alps, so here it's a bit too flat.
If only Japanese, communication is good, but if other countries people...
Let's skip forward a little bit.
Or like to have a smoke break or something like that. So yeah,
I can tell is a little bit amazed, very excited. I think here in Singapore the people are more introspective. I think it's not don't like, but I think they can enjoy more the life in different way.
Yes.
I think it can get boring sometimes. So again, we've been here so long. It is a small place at the end of the day. There's a lot to do, but it can get boring in that. I've had brunch at the place I had brunch for like 6 years now. So sometimes, yeah, it's just small and your options can be limited.
There are actually a lot of different nationalities.
So yeah, I have heard that for people that have been here a number of different years, right? Singapore is small. It's large to a person like me, but I can see after having been here 2, 3, 4 years where people can say that, it can be a bit, they need a bit more of a change. But the upside that I see to that is that like if things get a bit stale, like for instance, over the holidays, naturally speaking, where I'm at in my career, right, doing a lot of networking, connecting the dots and things of that nature, like everyone was on a holiday. Everyone was like, some people were in Batam, some people were in Malaysia, Indonesia, or they went back to Australia, or they went to Bali, right? Or they went to, I mean, there's so many different places that are easy to travel here, where you can do just quick weekend trips to really, really cool parts of the globe, right? And so for me, yeah, like when it does start to become small after we've been here maybe a few years, right? It's so easy to get to other places to where I'm like, okay, yeah, that can be something to factor in, right? But not a real concern for us, right? Because we're so close to so many awesome parts of Asia to where you're like, if you need a bit of pick me up, and maybe go to Thailand for a quick weekend or a long weekend, right? So that to me is worth its weight in gold.
Of expats in Singapore, and do you feel like people from different nationalities are treated differently?
I think that definitely happens to some extent. But hopefully it's not like such a big gap here in Singapore. But yeah, really, I haven't been through that myself here. So lucky me, I guess.
You have expat or workers, imported workers, and so on. There are different treatments of them, and you have maids and so on that sometimes not get treated.
Okay, there's a lot to cover there. I need to timestamp this video, right? So I've been asked by some folks, like, in terms of, okay, well, how do they treat black people, right? What's it like being black in Singapore? I don't let race factor in where I live for the most part, because I'm a black man everywhere, right? I've had horrible experiences growing up in the Deep South. I've experienced sundown towns, which, if you don't know what sundown towns are, look them up. I've talked about them here in closed circles, and people have just been kind of amazed and shocked and kind of experienced horror at the concept of sundown towns. I've had my own personal experiences with those, right? Like life-threatening experiences, right? And it's not to be a sob story, right? But it's just that the fabric of who I am is based off some pretty tough experiences, right? Groundbreaking experiences that I've experienced both in as a child, in my teens, and as an adult, to where once you've gone through these different things, the concept of sundown towns in the Deep South, I've had my life threatened and all sorts of different experiences, right? To where I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to let ignorance or my race dictate the course of my life, right? I'm black no matter where I go. With that being said, I don't feel like it's been an issue here, right? My wife is from Ukraine. We are a multicultural family. People have been welcoming, right? They've been overwhelmingly welcoming, right? I get stared at a lot, right? And I think a lot of times, right, there's a debate, not a debate, but a very popular viral topic going on right now on other forms of social media. Like there's this app called Red Note where, when Black people or African Americans ask about, their experience in Asia, and like, they're kind of tentative on what their experience would be like here, then people are like, some people have expressed shock. Like, why would you be tentative? Like, what have we done? And, even the act of staring at, like, so when I go to China, I think, for work in a few weeks here, and go with a friend, right? I imagine that people are going to stare. People are going to have some questions, right? Because I'm large. I'm a large black man. I'm tall. I stick out. I think that I have a very unique look, right? And I have to remind myself that, especially when we're here, like, and we're out and about with my son, who's also taller than I am, I think, and our giant dogs, right? We look different, right? But sometimes, right, just to add a bit of context here, right? When you have the upbringing that I had and some of the background that people of color have that's based kind of in trauma, your default instinct is like, why are they staring? Like, do I need to be on alert? Is there something threatening? Is that look a look of disgust? Is that a look of prejudice, or are they just curious, right? So we'll make a video about certain cultural exchanges and dive deeper into that. But no, it's been great here. Singaporeans have been very welcoming. I don't feel like race is an issue here. Race can be an issue anywhere in the world, right? This gentleman is about to get into another topic that can be a bit of a debate here, right? In terms of a lot of folks, a lot of expats, and a lot of locals have helpers, right? Maybe the term is maids or cleaners or whatever you want to use, right? And again, the fact of the matter is there are horrible people in the world, right? And that can be a very polarizing topic, right? I've seen things online with helpers that are probably maybe not treated the best. I don't attribute that to Singapore. I attribute that to just human nature, the dark side of human nature. right? And so there's certain, perspectives here, right? In terms of different nationalities here, where I'm sure I'm not a monolith. I don't speak for all black folks. I don't speak for all humanity, right? But people's experience here can be very varied, right? Depending on your circumstance and where you're from, right? But my experience has been positive. It's been great. I don't feel like my race and my interracial family is an issue here. I felt very welcomed, and it's been an awesome experience.
Very well, but in general, I think it's okay. I think they are considered expats by majority of Singaporeans, and they are respected. I mean, nearly everybody know that they are building the country and taking care of the old people and washing all the cars. So that's the way it works.
Because I've been working here for 20 years, I know already some of them are nice and not nice. So it's okay.
So, do you have any examples of when people are not so nice, and some of examples when people are nice to, let's say, maybe foreign domestic workers from Philippines?
I cannot say. But I think you know already. I don't want to say, but some.
That breaks my heart that she said that she can't say, right? The fear that some people must have, right? Because you need to be gainfully employed, right? And I don't want to attribute that ugliness to Singapore. I think that ugliness exists in the world. We could do with more kindness, right? But the fact that she just can't say, right? You can just kind of see a certain reservation there and a certain hesitation. I just hate it for any human being, no matter where you are in the world.
Some are rude, especially where they're looking for a nice family now. So
we're gonna skip forward a little bit.
From in the world that I operate in, I think an expat is treated similar.
So prices have been going up and forcing a lot of expats to leave.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I have my own condo, so that I bought many years ago. So I'm not.
Work hard, but not too hard, because like the working culture here is.
So I skipped over it, but they said I think the question was, this is the close of the video. What's the advice that you have for those wanting to move to Singapore?
Looking over Japan, I think, like, people work so hard here. I mean, I don't think there's like work-life balance here, but I mean.
So I want to say this. She says that she doesn't think there's work-life balance here. That's very situational, right? You take ownership over your own destiny, right? If you want to go work for a company like ByteDance, right, we won't go too deep into what that means, right? But there's certain countries and certain companies that are tied to certain countries where work-life balance is not respected as much, right? There's living to work versus working to live. I think the onus is on you to navigate through this world, right? What you prioritize and what's important to you. If feeding your family is important to you, do what you need to do, right? But in terms of work-life balance and not taking yourself too seriously, and not taking things too seriously, right? I choose to internalize that for myself, and I take that with me no matter where I go. Now, that comes at a certain risk, right? There was a point in my career where I was chasing a title, right? And I was just like, okay, I've got to do this. I've got to make a certain amount of money, right? And work-life balance was not it, right? I was doing everything I can, right? Not prioritizing whether it's health or whether it's family time or whatever it is, right? But, at this particular stage in my life, right, balance is important to me, right? As far as I know, not to get too deep into religious context, you don't get another shot at this, right? So I'm living my life very intentionally. And these statements and the sentiment of like, maybe next year, maybe next time, we're done with all that in 2025. We've been done with that for a few years now, right? And so I'm living very intentionally, right? And work-life balance falls under that umbrella, right? And so I think that onus is on you to figure that out for yourself. Whether you're in Singapore, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Germany, or whatever it is you're in the world, right? It can be a bit tougher, right? I think people do work very hard here, right? But not everyone is subscribed here, I think, to that rat race, right? I think that's very situational.
Try to integrate it and try to get as much balance as we can.
The only thing that I'd add is just immersing yourself in the culture and the opportunity. I think there's nothing worse than being an expat and moving to a country and then living in a little bubble. So
that right there. I'm fortunate enough to live next to a very cool family. I'm not going to say his whole name, but my neighbor has been a Singaporean diplomat for 30, 40 years. Worked in ambassadorship to the U.S. and things of that nature, right? And I remember reading an article. He was interviewed and he talked about his stint in the U.S. and he talked about the key to him operating in his particular diplomatic role was that he had been to all 49 states, right? I think the one that he missed was Montana, but there's other states I would have traded from Montana. But anyway, and he talked about getting out and being amongst the people, right? That's my approach, right? We live in an area called Upper Bukit and we are the only Americans, I think, around here, right? And that was very intentional, right? There's expat bubbles here that are great to eat and drink in and things of that nature, right? But I came here, and my family came here with the intent to really, really be humble, to listen, to learn, and to be very curious. We're curious people, right? Whenever I hire folks and whenever I run teams, you know, my motto is urgent curiosity, whether it's working in tech or whether it's your life, right? Be curious about the world around you and the people around you. It is not all about you. We set out with the purpose of raising our kids to understand that you are not the center of the universe, right? If you are fortunate enough and blessed enough to live in a part of the world that is thriving, good for you, right? But that is not everyone's experience, right? Everyone doesn't think the same, and you best adjust and shape your life to be where you can interact and converse with people that either don't look like you, don't think like you, or all the above, right? You know, and so for us, you know, I've been very intentional. I've been on a rampage. I think I set the goal to have 300 cups of coffee or drinks. We do like whiskey and tequila, right? Or dinner with different folks in the first 6 months here. And that's a pretty rampant pace. And I'm well on pace to hit that, right? But it's not, you know, networking is important for your career and it's important for obvious reasons, right? But I just have a genuine curiosity about people, right? And so for me, living in Singapore, right, and even expanding to the greater Asia, I need to understand how it all works. I need to understand the trials, the tribulations, the challenges, the ups, the downs, the nuances that you can't read about on the internet, the nuances you don't see when you see certain articles and certain YouTube videos, right? And you do that by engaging, actively listening, right? With genuine empathetic intent, right? It's not about even, I think most relationships at best should be symbiotic where you're both getting something out of it. But like, it really is about, okay, well, how do I fit into this culture and how do I enrich it? How do I, you know, if anything is needed from me, how do I make things and people better without the arrogance that comes with like, oh, I'm from the US and I'm just going to show you how it's done. No. The culture is very rich here. I'm not here to do any of that. I'm here to learn. I'm here to see, okay, well, how can I contribute? You know, how can I be a sounding board? How can I infuse positivity? How can I infuse goodness? And how can I, you know, and selfishly, like if I can take some of that, like, and learn something to help enrich my own life, I'm all for it, right? But that is a very important piece for us, right? And even now we are actively, there's initiatives I'm working on in which I can try and contribute to society here, volunteering, things of that nature, right? That's important to us, right? You know, not just for optics, but just for the purpose of just integrating ourselves into the culture and just being good human beings, right? I'm trying to raise good humans and lead by example at the end of the day.
So I think my recommendation to someone would be try new things, live in different pockets and in different areas so you really kind of get...
There are some days I get up, I don't use my phone for GPS. I just get on the MRT and I just go and I wonder and I interact, right? And I suspect I'm going to keep doing that, right? And getting, you know, different experiences here, right? Because that's what I came here for. I didn't come here to just sit in a bubble and just, you know, be around the same folks all the time, right? I came here to live an enriching and fulfilling life. And I'm off to a great start.
Get a sense of Singapore and venture out from, you know, your condo.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much opportunity.
Or keep an open mind. I mean, that's the way. And try to fit in. Don't be angry with something that you might not understand.
This gentleman, this is gonna. He just when you get older and you kind of live, there's a certain je ne sais quoi or a calm that just comes with, like, you know, it's like we go from life to where we're simple little humans trying to figure things out and not poop our pants, to where we become teenagers and young adults and we think we know everything, to adults who are trying to master and conquer the universe, and then kind of back to just like leveling out and understanding how small we are, that we're just a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. And then a whole overall level of calm and acceptance, a sort of sage mode, right? I love talking to people like this that are just like, you know, I love this guy's energy and his approach, and I feel like I want to buy him a cup of coffee. Sir, if you do see this video, please comment below. If you're still in Singapore, I would love to treat you to a cup of coffee, because I've been surrounding myself to folks that have been here, both that have worked in the tech space, that have been here for like 20, 30 years, and I'm just learning a ton. And so love that.
So, and and read a little bit about it before you take the decisions. Be aware that it is a multi-ethnic and multicultural society that where you have to fit in. So be a bit humble.
Wow. I think that's a good way to end the video when he said be a bit humble. God, life has a way of humbling you, right? The highest of my highs, the lowest of my lows. I tried to have humility and empathy be at the center point of my being and my core, right? And yeah, this video is about moving to Singapore and things of that nature, right? But if you lead with empathy, you lead with humility. I think it's a good way to end the video and a good way to wrap up. Like, you know, if you're seeking a multicultural experience and you're seeking to shake things up and maybe challenge yourself, maybe Singapore isn't the place for you, right? Maybe it's Dubai or maybe it's Europe, right? Maybe it's a different part of the world. Don't let others and your circumstances dictate your outcome, right? I mentor a lot of people that have been like, okay, well, I can't make that move because now's not the right time or because I got this challenge or I got this hurdle, right? We did the move, crossed the planet, 2 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, when we were told that you can only have 1 dog, lots of different hurdles and challenges, right? And so I said all that to say that it's not easy. Nothing worth having hardly ever is, right? And so if there's anything I can leave you with is just that, yeah, we are on our journey. We are still learning. I don't have everything figured out. The whole reason for this channel and this video is just to share a little bit more perspective into why I do the things that I do. And if it inspires you in any way, feel free to ask me anything in the comment section below. Videos you want to see me do a topic on, whether it's talking about AI here, cloud, cybersecurity, tech, or just the overall culture experience here. Sub to the channel if you want to learn more, or if you want to make a new friend, right? And you want to just connect with someone new, and you want to hear some perspective or swap perspective, I'm always open. Comment in the video below. Take care, y'all.